I'm going to be venturing back to a previous video that I uploaded around the hype and the intensity pertaining to the solar eclipse in Aries that is coming in on April the 8th. I am recording this the day before the solar eclipse, and I will upload it the day after the solar eclipse. But I want to venture back into the video that I uploaded about the hype and the propaganda and the intensity about the solar eclipse in a way of reflection. And I also want to take a little bit of a deep dive into the psychology of what has been happening, in hopes for reflection and in hopes for meaning dialogue around something that I feel is greater. It's a greater aspect of what we're experiencing that I feel needs some attention. I want to go back also a little bit in history to where propaganda started and how we are responding to certain messages and certain marketing materials that are being pushed out into the public. Now, propaganda started during the war. It was a way to entice people to basically sacrifice their lives for corruption, greed, and power in the way of a dream, in a way of an honorable duty, an honorable task, a very righteous thing to do. And this was pushed out in a very aggressive and very emotionally charged way. And so that messaging stuck and that tactic has stuck. And by the way, I also come from a marketing background. So I had about 20 years in marketing. I worked for some really big firms. I worked for some small boutique firms and on my own as well. And when I was working for some of the larger firms and also the smaller ones too, there was a common tactic used in order to entice people to buy, in order to entice people to maybe have a certain lifestyle or to live a certain way. The more I understood the underlying tactic of this, the more concerned I became about what was happening and how people were marketed to. I was really struggling with this for a long time when I started to see the truth. And this is a little bit of the double-edged sword. When you start to see the truth in certain things, it's hard to look back. It's hard not to see it. It's hard to unsee it. This also was difficult for me because this was also my career. And I had been in this career for a long time, and it's really all I knew. And I liked it. I liked many aspects of it. You can probably tell by my own marketing that I carry it through, and I really love some of the components of this. But the psychology of marketing is very manipulative. The psychology of marketing has to do with playing on people's emotions and playing on people's psychological responses. It's very smart, and this has been developed for a long time. It's a very refined practice. It's a very refined way of communicating and marketing to people. And we are naturally, all of us, not all, but a lot of us are the byproducts of those strategies and marketing tactics. We're used to, in some way, I'm not saying it's healthy, but we have become accustomed to the wow factor, the big marketing, the messaging, the subliminal messaging too as well. And we can become very allured and very drawn into some of the ways of communicating and marketing, right? And this is one of the bigger aspects that I want to address in this now. I'm doing this not to throw shade on other people, especially in the spiritual community, the greater mainstream media. They have their thing and they're going to be doing what they do until the end of their time. But also I want to address the general marketing content creation community, because I had gone through this myself. I had gone through this many years ago when I started another YouTube channel called Golden Heart Rising. When I first started publishing videos, I had a bit or a lot of the wow factor because everyone else was doing it. And I thought that, yeah, this makes sense. The messages are exciting. I want people to understand the importance of this message, and wow, there's opportunity for them to change their lives. And then I started to realize over time that we are constantly changing. We are constantly changing. There was someone also who left a message on my previous video that there are constant disasters happening in the world at any given time. We are constantly changing. We are constantly evolving every second of the day. So when we, as in content creators, put messages out there or media, we are creating some kind of reaction within people. And I started to become very mindful of this during my own work, because I started realizing that the messages that I was giving out to people weren't actually helping them. In fact, if anything, it probably was creating a negative response within themselves, hoping and feeling that something big was going to happen in their lives or some big change was going to occur. And big change and happenings can happen in a flash. But from my experience, and this goes into the recent podcast that I uploaded, episode number 65, I think it is, talking about the current energies, this process of ours, of change, of transformation, of creating success, of building a relationship, of meeting new people, of having fun in our lives is a slow burn process. It comes in waves. It comes in flow. We are in a state of creating and being in the present moment. And so I feel that a lot of the messaging that's going out is unconsciously created based on how we've been used to communicating and marketing. And this form of marketing, the hype-based, the fear-based, creates a reaction within people's unconscious self. And so people are doing this unconsciously. People are unconsciously promoting these big events in such big, grandiose ways because that's the way we've been used to marketing. But it's not helping our evolution. And I feel that the well is going to run dry for that type of marketing in the future because a lot of us are going to start waking up to this very notion of reality. The more fear we are in because of marketing, the less we are going to connect with ourselves, the less change we are going to create in our lives. And we are going to get stuck in this cycle, this perpetual cycle of doomsday, end of the world, life changing overnight, just this big hype media and marketing and prophecies that are coming in that are constantly latching on to a specific event to use that as stimulation for something greater, for something bigger. Now, it's a product of our unconscious self. It's a product of history, how we've been used to communicating, and also the fear of something bad is going to happen. Doomsday, Armageddon, end of the world. Well, I'll tell you, if there's a fire that started all of a sudden here, then I would rather deal with it in a calm and collected way rather than frantically running around feeling like my life is going to end. So we can choose how to deal with events. We can choose to deal with it by being in fear or being in desperation, latching on to a message that we feel is going to help change our lives. Or we can connect and get real about what is happening within ourselves and within life and change the cycle in a more meaningful and empowering way. So I talked about this also in that latest episode podcast, which I'll leave a link below to check it out if you like. But this is, I feel, the shift that is going to eventually happen. And as I mentioned, going back into marketing, a lot of the tactics that are used subliminally target people's unconscious psychology, unconscious behaviors, unconscious beliefs. It's very manipulative. And a lot of people out there who are marketing or who are creating promotions or even creating videos may not even realize the messages that they are putting out there. They're probably unconsciously marketing and promoting and talking about this in a certain way. And as I mentioned, we have mainstream media over there. They're going to be doing their thing until the end of their time. They're going to be talking about certain events, fear-based events, until they run out, of funds because nobody's going to be watching their news anymore because it's the same messaging over and over and over again. But in this realm, if you want to call it spirituality, I had a hard time calling it the spiritual community because I feel that this is life. I feel that spirituality, the way of being, is life, right? And in this community, we have a chance to create change. And I feel that people in maybe my position as content creators have a bit of a responsibility. And that responsibility is to consider you, the people watching, and how they may respond to this type of content. And again, I'm not doing this to throw shade, but I feel it's important. And I feel that knowing what's happening in the world and how people are suffering right now and how lost people are feeling, it's easy to react to hype-based, fear-based content, or even the reverse of being your life is going to change overnight because a portal is opening and everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to get better just like that overnight. When I know that that's not necessarily the case. It takes time for us to evolve. It takes time for us to change as long as we are working on ourselves and pointing ourselves in that direction. and feeling within ourselves and understanding our unconscious self. And our unconscious has many layers, but through simple observation, we can change this. We can change how we are communicating with others, and we can also change how we are responding to messages by tuning in and listening to ourselves, listening as in paying attention to how our body and our emotions and our mind are reacting to certain messages and certain events. And I mentioned this in my podcast as well, and I just mentioned it here. I would rather, if the world's going to go down, I would rather go down in peace and as in a meaningful way as possible, rather than going down with it, meaning myself falling apart during the process. And we can find ourselves falling apart. I mean, this is unfortunately the place where we are in this world, where a lot of us are falling apart in order to find ourselves again. And I feel that we are going to continually keep moving away from ourselves more and more if we are falling into hype-based predictions, hype-based media, fear-based media, anything that is trying to get our attention and even implant a hope that something just will magically show up and change our lives, or a portal is going to open and all of a sudden our life is going to change. And I've done a lot of portal work. Of course, I work with the moon, but it is to create intentional work around our practice, to tune in with ourselves and to pay attention to maybe some messages or indicators of where we need to go, what we need to focus on, or what we can create as far as something meaningful and impactful in our lives, but from within here, right? So again, I'm not doing this to come down on any of the other content creators, or, well, mainstream media is its own thing. And I think you know how I feel about it. So it is what it is, and it's not going to change. So I suggest to not pay attention to mainstream media at all, as far as I feel it is not the truth of reality and of life. But the truth of reality and life is you and how you are feeling right now and what you are witnessing through the lens of truth. And yes, authenticity. Whatever your truth is within yourself, the alignment within, that is your reality. And unfortunately, fortunately, we have to go through those false beliefs that we have within ourselves. And this is part of the process. This is part of the process when we see what's happening on the greater scale, some of the ways that people are communicating, some of the ways people are marketing or promoting, some of the ways that people are covering certain events. We get to observe, right? You get to observe and you get to see, okay, what is actually happening here? This is a byproduct of society. This is a byproduct of conditioning. And this is a byproduct of marketing and how we've been used to marketing to people and towards us. And so we can break the cycles. We can break the cycles of the way we are communicating and the way we are marketing and the way we are reaching people. Because I know in the future that well is going to run dry eventually, and people are going to be seeking and searching more meaningful ways to understand what's happening in the world and within themselves and life itself. And by that, I mean it's not going to be through hype-based media and marketing. It's not going to be through the world is going to end, or your whole life is going to shift overnight, or big change is coming for you. It's not going to come from that. And we have to go deeper. We have to go deeper and more meaningful with how we are supporting one another and how we are creating change in this world and breaking cycles of the past. All right, so I'm just going to leave it there. A little bit more information about some reflection I've been doing after my latest video. And as I mentioned, you are your truth. And so whatever's happening within yourself on a deep level, or even observing the greater landscape, is going to give you information about what is really happening on this greater timeline or in this micro moment in time. So I'm wishing you all the best during this time and beyond. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Take care.